Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on UK Association to Horizon to Horizon Europe, an update from UK International, the UK Science and Innovation Network, and colleagues from UK Research and Innovation. We're really glad that you could all join us today for the latest in this long-running series of webinars with the UK Science and Innovation Network, particularly to our colleagues who are joining us from Europe. The aim today is to give you a quick update on where we stand in relation to the process of the UK becoming an associated country to Horizon Europe, and also on some of the announcements that have been made in the last few months on the UK side to try and increase the level of security and certainty that we can offer researchers who are in the process of applying for that funding. UK International is fully committed and a firm believer in the importance of association to Horizon Europe, and we hope this is going to be completed in a swift way. But in the meantime, we're really keen today to tell you all about these latest developments, which should help give some more security to you as researchers and research managers. So today we have three excellent speakers here to guide you through these developments and to answer your questions. Inge Benner, Deputy Director from the UK Research Office in Brussels. Gavin Salisbury, the Head of International Policy Delivery at UK Research and Innovation, and Francis Wood, the Regional Director of the UK Science and Innovation Network. And I should have said at the start, my name is Peter Mason, Head of Global Research and Innovation Policy at Universities UK International. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Francis to give you an update on where we stand in relation to UK Association to Horizon.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you to everyone for joining today. I hope that you can hear and see us okay. The link from this will be sent round, as will the slides, so please don't worry if you sort of miss anything. And if you have a question, please do put it in the Ask a Question box, which is sort of, for me, midway along the bottom of my screen, rather than in the chat. That allows us as the panel to make sure that we don't miss your questions. So I think I just wanted to sort of take one step back before I hand over to Gavin to talk about the detail of the financial guarantee in terms of where the UK government is on Horizon and the UK Association. So, back in the midst of time now, I think last year, the UK government was negotiating the Trade and Cooperation Agreement with the EU. And as part of this, we negotiated our association agreement to 3 European research programmes. So that's Horizon Europe, Copernicus, and Euratom Research and Training. So today we will just be focusing on Horizon, but I just wanted to sort of make that clear that there were 3 programmes that we as the UK government very much wanted to participate. And the reason that we did this was because we think that membership of these brings real benefit to the UK and to our goals on science and research, but also because we understand that research and innovation is only possible through global collaboration, and these programmes are some of the biggest mechanisms or vehicles for collaboration globally. So I just wanted to make that point really quite strongly at the beginning, that the UK government remains committed to association. So the introduction of this financial guarantee does not in any way change that commitment. So the UK, as I said, stands ready and willing to implement what was agreed last year as part of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, and has made that clear. However, despite this being part of the agreement, there have been persistent delays on the EU side, and we don't yet have a clear timeline from the Commission on when UK association will happen. So from the UK government side, we're ready to move as quickly as possible. We very much see this as a sort of win-win scenario, both for the UK and for partner countries. But it is also worth emphasising, and this is on the slides, that at the moment, the UK is in effect treated like an associated country, with one exception. So it really is worth reading the Commission's Q&A on sort of what the UK can and can't do. And there is a sort of brief summary on the slides that essentially, UK entities are eligible for funding at the same rates, that they can lead on project consortia, and that they count towards the minimum number of countries and calls for projects. So all of this, there is this wider context of uncertainty in which we're operating. But we have this clear commitment from the Commission side. And as Gavin will go into in a bit more detail, we have the sort of clear commitment from the UK side with the financial guarantee to try and give as much certainty as possible within that wider uncertainty. So I mentioned that there was one sort of part that is trickier in this until we are formally associated, and that is the signing of grant agreements. So this is why we have brought in this financial guarantee, is in the sort of scenario where it gets to that point where you need to sign a grant agreement in order to progress with a project, that the UK government in effect will underwrite that. As with all things to do with research, these things are always quite complicated in the detail and sort of who's eligible, how do you go about it? And so that's mainly why we thought that having this webinar today would be a good idea. So I will now, sorry, Peter, could you just go on to the next slide very briefly, and then I will hand over to Gavin. So it's just, here is again some guidance that the Commission has issued, which is about the grant agreement and about eligibility. So what I just want to say about the financial guarantee is that it is a short-term measure. So it isn't a blanket guarantee that underpins everything for the whole of the Horizon Europe programme, because the expectation from the UK government side is that we, as the UK, will formally associate, and therefore the financial guarantee will not be necessary. So just to say that this is a sort of short-term measure effectively to bridge us to that point. So I will now hand over to Gavin to go into a bit more detail of how it will operate.
Yes, thanks, Francis. Morning, everybody. So I work in the UK RI International, Central International Shared Capability, as it's called, and we are responsible within our team for coordinating the cross-UK RI project to deliver this guarantee. So to go into a little bit of background on it, it was announced by government on the 29th of November that the first wave of calls, successful applicants would be guaranteed their funding once it became clear that they were unable to sign the grant agreement. So that was a sort of limiting factor, as Francis has already explained. So UKRI, UK Research and Innovation, will deliver that funding, and we published further information and guidance just before Christmas on the 17th of December. So the link is there for those who haven't seen that. More detail than I'm able to go into here. And some questions and answers as well. Giving further information is available there should you wish to look at it. So in terms of how it's going to work operationally, obviously to receive funding, UK beneficiaries will have to enter their details on UKRI grant systems. And for those who aren't aware, we have a couple of different systems in operation in UKRI. So for most of the grant types concerned with the guarantee, this will be via the Innovate UK Innovation Funding Service, whereas the ERC starting grants, which form part of the guarantee, will be provided through the research system, so it's known as the Joint Electronic Submissions, or JES system. Next slide, please. So I just tried to highlight here the key features that might be of interest for the guarantee. So obviously the first thing to say is that, these applications have already been peer reviewed, they've been quality assessed. There will not be no further quality assessment undertaken by UKRI. This is about supporting people who've been successful. So there's no second guessing of the EC process. So it's important to note. Secondly, for all grant types in the scope of the guarantee, the funding will be provided for the whole lifetime of the grant. subject to our UKRI terms and conditions. Although obviously those UKRI terms and conditions will flex to allow for the fact that these are European projects, and some of them still will be part of consortia in the EU. So the way it will work is that obviously we don't want to jump the gun. So as Francis says, this is only an as necessary support system. But once it becomes clear for a certain grant type or call, we will basically open and close a window. Once it's clear that nothing can be done, that there's no wriggle room left for those people anymore. Successful UK applicants will be able to obtain the UKRI grant through our systems. So none of those are open yet. We haven't quite reached that point where it's definitely necessary, but those windows will be announced for each call as and when it becomes the case. So I think what we're saying in terms of preparation for people is to make sure that your organisation is registered on the right system, and that you know how to access those systems. And then we will provide further detail on exactly what's needed from you in due course. And full guidance will be provided for each grant type on our website. So not all of the information is available yet, but it will be when it's needed, is the message. Okay, next slide, please. So this slide just it covers what's in scope for what we're calling wave one. So I won't go through each type, but you'll get this set of slides afterwards. But these are the things where grant agreements are expected to need to be signed by April time. And just to note as well that for those who are involved with them, knowledge and innovation communities funding activities carried out last year and included in the KICS business plans for this year are covered also by this guarantee. I won't go into the details of the wording there because, as you can see, it's quite complicated, but I just wanted to mention that they are also in scope. So I won't say any more to that list, but we can provide further details if needed. And then just finally, obviously, as Francis says, this is very much a safety net for immediate issues around signing grant agreements. So, but just to reassure everyone that this scope is being actively monitored, and if the government feels it's necessary to change the scope, it will be, and further guidance will be issued. And we have an inbox UKRI for queries, so welcome to write to us there. If I could just ask, I guess, that if you're part of a consortium, that the consortium organises to send us a query together rather than all sending us different queries from the same consortium. That would be helpful, just so that we can keep our queries straight and replies. So that was all I was going to say. That's all from me, but as I said, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gavin and Francis, for that really helpful explanation of the situation as regards the safety net and where we stand in relation to Horizon. I'm going to invite Francis and Gavin and Inga all to share their cameras again, come back on the screen, and we'll start to go through the questions that we've received in the chat. We have the rest of this hour for questions, so if there's anything that's unclear following those presentations that you'd like to seek further clarification on, please do put it in the chat. So the first question, I'll go through them in order of the upvotes, is about the anticipated timescale for the association to actually be completed, because obviously researchers are in the grant negotiation stage at the moment, so lots of people are interested in that. So I know this is still a live topic, but I think perhaps Francis, is there anything that you would say about the timescale?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I mean, I'd love to be able to say, by the end of January that this will be done, but I think, as I said in my introduction, the delay is on the Commission side at the moment. So the UK government has done everything possible in order to be ready and to make that clear to the Commission. So we are waiting for them to come back to us with a timeline. We are hoping that it will be as soon as possible, which is partly, as I said, why we are not issuing a blanket guarantee that it's for these sort of chunks as necessary, because we are anticipating being able to associate as soon as possible. I know that for the research community that is less than ideal. You know, we would love to be in a world where there is certainty and we can just get on with the science and the research, but this is where we are now, and you know the delay is on the Commission side. So unfortunately, I can't give you a timeline.
Thanks, Francis. I would just add to that from a UKI perspective. As I said at the start, we remain fully committed to pushing for association to be confirmed, and we're really pleased that there's a lot of support, I think, across the EU for a swift resolution to this. We had a number of statements from different organisations, from the European University Association and lots of smaller university networks, pushing the Commission to expedite this process. And I know for a fact there's more similar efforts afoot as we speak to try and expedite that. So just to kind of reiterate that we are doing everything we can as a lobby group as well to try and push for this to be resolved as quickly as possible. Just looking down the questions, I think Francis, you answered the next question there about the fact that it's just a subset of calls at the moment. So perhaps I'll move on to a specific question there about the starting grants. So what is the situation for ERC starting grants? The results with which were published in earlier this month, with UK institutions as a host. Should they start looking for alternative hosts in member states, or will the safety net cover their ERC grant costs if association does not happen? Who would like to respond to that? Gavin?
Yeah, so sorry, I probably skipped over the list of calls a little bit quickly, but the ERC starting grants definitely in scope of this guarantee. So we would encourage people to continue to think they can be hosted by the UK university they initially wanted to come to, because that will be is definitely covered if things don't go as we would like.
Excellent. Thanks, Gavin. I think also probably another question for you here is about when will details of how to register with IFS or JES be available?
Yes, so although we've used the word, this is a sort of sophistry question really, because we've used the word registration in the guidance, but really that was just to emphasise that, you know, we're not doing new assessment of these grants, so it's more of a registering of details rather than it is applying for funding. But in a sense, of course, it is applying for funding. So we don't require people to register in advance for us. When it becomes clear that something needs to happen on a particular call, we will issue the guidance, and then you can apply for the funding. You know, it's kind of, we don't require pre-registration in the same way that we had a system set up before EU exit happened for H2020. So we don't need that same kind of thing. And so you're welcome to contact us through the inbox if you have any questions, but we don't need sort of that pre-registration on the system. The main thing is to make sure that you do know how to access it. And sorry, I just got a meeting invitation through Zoom then. So the main thing is, as I say, to make sure that you know how to access the system, and that your organisation is registered in the general sense. You know, if you're a business partner, for example, that you do know how to access IFS and that sort of thing is useful, but we don't require pre-registration. Sorry for the interruption.
And maybe just to sort of reinforce one of Gavin's points about no further application quality assessment will be undertaken by UKRI. So I think that's really important. So, you know, if you've gone through the process at an EU level and have been successful, then this is essentially a piece of admin rather than anything in terms of, whether your project, there's no assessment of sort of, the quality of your project. It's just sort of making sure that you get the money in order for the project to go ahead once it's been deemed successful.
Excellent. No, thanks for that, Gavin and Francis. Indeed, in the conversations that we've had with our members over the last few months, that point about not having any secondary evaluation has been really important. So great to emphasise that point again. The next two questions on the list relate to adding more calls. I know, Francis, you touched on this briefly already. I don't know if there's anything further you'd like to say about whether it's likely that more calls will be added, and specifically, I think there's questions about the other pillars in the programme. There's I see a follow-up question there about a specific pillar 2 call, which is about to close. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything further you can say on that point.
I think Gavin's covered it well, that this is under constant review. There is a specific team in BEIS, so the parent department of UKRI, that is assessing this, making sure that this is sort of rolling. But we recognise that there would be, I think, from many of you, a strong preference just for a blanket. But I come back to the point that I made at the beginning, that our preference as the UK government is association. So this is just the sort of stopgap or the bridge or the safety net to get to the place that we want to be. But I recognise that is maybe not the way that you would like it to operate.
Thank you, Francis. I see there's a few comments cropping up in the questions, which is fine, but I won't address those specifically. I think the next substantive question was about Gavin. You spoke about the UKRI T's and C's flexing to reflect grants that started out as EU-funded projects, and there's a specific question here about whether that includes portability for ERC grants. You're still on mute, Gavin.
Sorry, I clicked and then clicked away, and it hadn't taken effect. So that will be a difference to. I'm trying to speak up because of the comment that people couldn't hear us, so I'm shouting now into my laptop. That will be a difference to the ERC grants. So they will be basically portable within the UK, as a standard UKRI grant would be, but obviously, it's no longer equivalent to ERC in terms of portability of moving out to an EC member state or whatever later. So that would be a difference. Is that clear? Sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Gavin. There's the next question on the list that I can see there is about the actual reasons for the delay, the dispute over the Northern Ireland Protocol. I think, to be honest, we're probably not going to be able to get into a great deal of detail about the reasons why this is happening. From a UKI perspective, all I would say is that indeed we are aware that there have been comments made by representatives of the Commission to that effect, but the official explanation is simply relating to internal processes being completed. So although obviously there is a lot of speculation that we could go into in terms of the actual official lines, it's a simple case of waiting for administrative processes to be completed. I suspect, I don't know if any of the other speakers want to say anything else on that point, but if not, I'll just move on to the Inga, please come in.
Just maybe something to add to that. We're based here in Brussels, and we work a lot with other European partners and offices. And something to stress, that while there is the delay, what a lot of people aren't so aware of is that once association can go ahead, so once any obstacles are out of the way, the UK is ready to associate. There is already a full agreement in place, and I think it's called the Joint Declaration, which is part of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, and that has been in place since last year. we like to, or even before it was the end of 2020, and we like to really remind people of that, because not everyone is always so aware of the technicalities. So what wouldn't have to happen would be a long kind of period of negotiation. We are ready to associate. So once other things are out of the way, it could happen fairly swiftly. I think that's always worth kind of stressing as well, because I know a lot of the colleagues joining today are maybe not dealing with UK association on a daily basis. So just to add that.
Absolutely, yes, that's a really good point. I think important that there's no legislative process left to complete. Indeed, it's a simply bureaucratic. A meeting has to take place, and where everyone agrees to the proposal from the Commission. So indeed, hopefully this will happen very quickly once whatever roadblocks are in place have been removed. Inge, I think I might come back to you with another question on the list here about the situation for UK coordinators. Can UK grant partners so the question suddenly disappeared. Anyway, can UK grant partners officially coordinate EU or Horizon projects without the association agreement in place?
So they currently, with the current status as a to be associated country, yes. However, if association wasn't going to take place, so if for the grant it is not in place by the grant signature, no. So then the status is, unfortunately, it's quite confusing. The new status is called associate partner, which is the non-association scenario. So I know the terminology doesn't help here, but that comes from the Commission. And while in Horizon 2020 that would have been still possible for a third country, I prefer to call it because it's a bit clearer, to coordinate, that is no longer possible in Horizon Europe. So coordination would have to be moved to another partner in the consortium.
Thanks, Inge. So just looking down the questions here, I saw there was one which I've lost momentarily about the perspective of a company or an SME partner. If anyone else can spot that on the list, then please do jump in. I'm just trying to pan up and down the list, see if I can find that. Oh, maybe that's disappeared. Okay, then I'll move on to another question here. So will UK have a separate assessment of projects which have been successful in the first stage of a two-stage call, or any project which is successful will be eligible for financial guarantee? I think this is perhaps moving a bit beyond the guarantee, the financial safety net, which is already been announced. But I don't know if any of the speakers would like to try to respond to that question. If not, I think that might be kind of moving beyond the commitment that's being made at present. So perhaps we'll move on to a separate question. Sorry, I'm just... there's a question here about, again, I think probably about for Gavin, about the grant management processes. Can you advise in a bit more detail about the actual grant management processes of EU projects if we are reliant on the guarantee, if that does apply? Do we need to follow EU rules and regulations on eligible costs or UKRIs? And also a question about which exchange rate will be applied to the conversion. Gavin, is there anything you can say on that?
Well, I can, but it's a kind of non-answer, I'm afraid. We're very aware of these issues being important, and believe me, they are really top of my list to answer as soon as we possibly can. So rest assured we are working on that, but I can't say anything specific at the moment. But I'm very aware that these are holes in the guidance at the moment, and we are working through them as hard as we can.
Great, thanks, Kevin. I found the question I was looking for before. So the question was about, is the process for accessing, I presume, accessing the financial safety net the same for company partners? The question was about a project where there's two UK construction sector partners who are new to HE funding. So they're advising, I presume, the the institution, the university is advising those companies on the participation process. So anything that anyone would like to say on other types of participants in Horizon projects?
Well, I mean, it is the same safety net for all organisation types. So it's not just universities. Businesses are also covered. So if that's not clear, that's an important point to emphasise, that it is everyone who's successful, whether it's a charity, a business, or a university, or whatever kind of organisation, you are covered. So, as I say, if you're not familiar with UKRI's processes, then and systems, then get in touch just to make sure that you are registered in a timely way, as I mentioned earlier, on the right system. It will be IFS for most people. It's only at the moment the starting grants, which would be JES Siebel.
Thank you, Gavin. I think there's an important question I've spotted here about if association, if UK association is confirmed in the coming months, will it retroactively apply to all of the calls in 2021? Who would like to respond to that?
I mean, what we're saying is that once grants are taken on by UKRI, they will remain UKRI grants. So grants covered by this guarantee will remain with us, and that, of course, they will still participate in consortia as per usual, but they won't revert back to being fully covered by EU funding. So that's the position at the moment.
Thanks, Gavin.
And I think, Peter, just to say, that's partly why we're doing this in sort of chunks, because obviously things are just much easier if it's part of the kind of normal process. And this is the sort of the safety net that is, doesn't work quite as well as if you were part of just the way that the EU funds things. So just to sort of emphasise that point again.
Yes, thanks, Francis. I was just going to add the same thing, that this is, obviously that's less than ideal. So in a way, we want to have this a smaller cohort of projects as we can, really recognising those difficulties and terms and conditions and those kinds of things.
Thank you both. Just again, looking through the questions, I see there are a lot of questions about the and comments about the barriers that exist. So again, I think we probably are going to avoid getting into the weeds on that particular point. There is a question here. Inge.
I was just thinking of something, coming back to the point I made about terminology and association and associate partner. One of the things we are stressing is that when applications go in at the moment, they should go in with the UK as an associated partner. And that's really important, not as an associated country, not partner. You see, even I confused the two. Because you do have to request. Currently, you should follow the guidance that Francis had on her very first slide that was issued by the Commission, and that says that the UK is considered an associated country. And that means you are requesting EC funding, and that's really important, not to get confused and to move into that associated partner category for calls you're currently applying for, which will, come into negotiation in 8 to 10 months time after the deadline. So that's really important, is to not to confuse the two and to make sure you submit an eligible proposal, basically.
A very important point. There's a question here about a call in emerging technologies and about a restriction that would apply to the UK if association isn't completed by the time that the call closes. I think this is probably an offshoot of the question about when the list of calls covered may be extended and what might be able to be done when if the UK does kind of fall foul of those particular rules. But is there anything anyone would like to say on that particular point about where the UK would eligibility would for a particular project would change if it were associated with a third country? it's a slightly difficult point to answer, I suppose. But
yeah, I mean, maybe not to answer in detail, but just to say that there is, you know, and this is why the UK government wants full association, is because it will give us greater access to the programme as a whole. That there will be some more exceptions for countries that are sort of essentially the associate partners or the third countries, in areas where there is potential sort of security issues, which is in some of the emerging technology areas. I think that's, you know, that is why we're still pushing, because we want maximum access. The UK has great expertise in some of these areas, but just to say that is one of the differences. But I'm not a deep expert on this, so I don't want to get into too much detail. I don't know if Inga or Gavin would like to add.
No. Okay. No, thank you for that, Francis. I think looking through the questions, I think most of them are covering issues that we've already looked at. There was one, I think, Gavin, you have answered this, but maybe just for the sake of clarity, I think you have already answered this anyway. There's a question here: does this mean that UKRI will be the monitoring body during the entire grant, or just during the negotiation, and it will stop when the UK becomes an associated member?
I assume you mean monitoring of the grant once it's in train. Is that monitoring of the project? Is that what you mean?
I presume so, yes.
Well, as I say, so the elements of the project, you know, if it's a consortium-based project, so there are different partners, then, you know, we would do some monitoring of, you know, the UK element of it, but we still expect the UK partner to be contributing to consortium reports and so on that's required from the, you know, the EC governance structure, whatever that is, depending on the call. So in that sense, you know, this is one of the things that we look to bottom out with the terms and conditions to make sure that we're not not imposing anything too onerous on people, that recognise that they still have to be part of the consortium and do what the EC requires as through the reporting, through the coordinator, etc.
Perfect, thank you, Gavin. There was a question about where we can, where attendees can find more information about the list of grants covered, and we will share those links. I don't know if it's possible to share those. I think, have they been shared in the chat already? I'm just looking up there. If not, we will make sure that goes out when we send out the slides after the event. So we'll make sure. I see Francis has just put that in the chat. Thank you. And I think one other question that I see, which looks slightly different from the others received, is about the infrastructure funding. If we become an associated country, will we be eligible to apply for those infrastructure funding calls? Inga, perhaps, I don't know if I can ask whether you could answer that question.
Sorry, do you mind repeating?
Yes, sure.
That? I just heard.
Yeah, so it's if we become, well, an associated country, would we be eligible to apply for EU infrastructure or access calls?
Yes, so we will allow to, as a third country, there is access to all the multi-beneficiary grants at large that you can apply for. It is just really the mono-beneficiaries, so where it's just one beneficiary, where there's issues. If we become a third party.
Yes, sorry, it's associated partner.
So I have some problems with my connection. I hope you can.
No, that's fine. I think we heard you loud and clear. I think unless any of the other speakers spotted any questions on the list that that you feel equipped to answer, or that we haven't already covered.
Peter, there was one question in the chat, I think. Sorry, just scrolling back up, about, is it possible to second staff to UK participants which receive UKRI funding? So Gavin, I don't know if that's something you could cover.
not quite sure I understand the question. I think it's a matter for the consortium to manage themselves, because I think it as long as it doesn't affect the value of the grant that the UK team is getting, I don't think there's any problem with that. But I'm probably not understanding the question entirely, to be honest.
I think it is. There is the option of following up via email, so we can try and respond offline to some of these questions. Similarly, I saw there was a question about trying to kind of collate some of the these Q&As. I will certainly do our best to try and ensure that the answers to these questions are shared. I'm not sure what form that will take at the moment. We'll discuss this after the event, perhaps. But and there is one other question I've just seen come in the chat as well as on the Q&A about whether UKRI will provide funding in the form of, I suppose, according to the same payment schedule as an EU grant with an upfront kind of allocation. Gavin, is there something you can say on that?
Yes, I mean that is we speak to that in the guidance documentation, but basically it will be UKRI standard payment schedule. So typically that's quarterly in arrears, so there won't be the same prepayment made as the EU does. So that's quite important to note, obviously, because it is quite different from EU process. So that's in the guidance, but if anything's unclear when people see that, then obviously drop us a line.
Great. Okay then. Well, I think. Sorry, I've just seen the question in the chat, which is being posted there. Will the delay in association and limited scope of the guarantee are causing issues with the UK partnering on projects on current open calls? Coordinators are looking for more assurance than we can currently give them. Should the UK not associate? What do you advise that we offer in terms of assurance? Are you giving assurance that all programmes will be brought in as their deadlines for signing arise? Would anyone like to try and respond to that? I think again we have spoken around this topic, I think, but I understand that there's a specific question here about what we can actually say to partners and UK researchers who are in those projects, involved in those applications at the moment. So again, I don't know if there's anything, any further comment that any of the speakers would like to make on that point. But I mean, in any case, rest assured, it's a point that we recognise and will continue to kind of, from a UKI perspective, reiterate in our discussions with government around this. If not, Inga?
Well, sorry, I was just going to say I wish I could provide all of that assurance, but sadly I can't. But we're working hard to see whether the scope needs to change and try to provide more assurance. But at the moment, it's not possible, I'm afraid.
Maybe just to add, I would agree it was difficult with assurance as such. What we can offer is to provide all the facts in one place that can be shared, and it is of course for consortia to make up their own mind, but we have a fact sheet that's publicly available. I'll make the link available to you, Peter, so you can maybe share it with the slides. It's something we keep up to date. So we, for example, link to the UKRI guidance, but we also have a short summary of what I was explaining earlier about where we are with association, what the joint declaration is. So what we can offer is a bit more information that can be used for consortia, because we often see that the researchers themselves, as I say, they don't follow this on a daily basis, and they find that quite useful to have everything together. And I think what consortia then hopefully see is that everyone has thought about the different scenarios and that things are being put in place and can be used as and when, and that those projects who are now potentially concerned by the delay will be taken care of. So I think that's as far as I could go with giving advice on that situation.
I might also just add a few words from a Universities UK international perspective, that as a broad point, we absolutely recognise the the challenge that the current situation presents to institutions and to individual researchers, and we're constantly trying to reiterate to government the need for updating the steps that have already been taken to provide additional security where that's possible, and also obviously at a top level to conclude the process as a whole. I would say we'd always welcome any specific examples you have to share about where this is affecting your institution. This is all useful information for us, and helps us to try and really illustrate to government and how urgent this is. So from a UKI perspective, as I say, please do feel free to get in touch with us, and I'll make sure that you have our contact details in the slides that we'll share afterwards. So we are constantly getting new questions in. I want to try and get through as many of them as possible. There's a technical one here. I can't say I completely understand it myself. I will read it out, and hopefully we'll see if one of the speakers understands it. So please, can you clarify the situation with affiliated entities outside the UK, e.g. UK associated partner with an EU-based affiliated entity, and the opposite scenario of a EU beneficiary with a UK affiliated entity? Will the UK guarantee to fund affiliated entities' costs? Inge, I saw you nodding as I read that, so I'm afraid that means I'm going to see if you have an answer.
I read that earlier, to be honest. I was trying to make my way through it and get my head around it, because this is one of the things where terminology has also changed in Horizon Europe, and not necessarily for the better, or to help those of us who've been dealing with the framework program for a little while. So affiliated entities used to be linked third parties in Horizon 2020. So that's different from the status UK partners would get if the UK was not going to associate, or for those who might have to join projects before the association agreement is signed. So that's the difference. A linked third party, I think, makes it a bit clearer. It is, you're then linked to an EU partner, and the EU partner would be the one to get the funding, and who used to declare the costs as well on behalf of the linked third party. So my understanding is that the guarantee looks at the associated partners. So that used to be international partners, I guess, in Horizon Europe.
Thank you, Inge. In awe of your mastery of EU jargon there. There's another question here about coordination. So an example of one possible course of action here. So what would happen if a UK partner coordinates an awarded project and then transfers the role to another partner? What would happen if the UK subsequently associates to Horizon Europe, and the UK partner submits an amendment to the Commission to change back to the coordinator? Would UKRI or the Commission terms prevent this, or could we do it and report to both UKRI and the Commission for the remainder of the project? Is there anything that sounds like a hypothetical? I can understand the gist of the question, but I'm not sure if there's anyone who'd like to try and respond to whether that would be possible. Inge, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I had the question in front of me. I can't find it now. I think that scenario, if it was going to happen, if you do amend and become a full partner again of the project, so no longer an associate partner, I don't see why that couldn't happen. Having said that, what Gavin said earlier is the idea is if the project has to be absorbed or taken care of by the guarantee, then it would be with UKRI and its UKRI funding. So it is a bit hypothetical in the sense that you would then ask the Commission, I guess, to make the funding available again at a later stage. So that's something where I don't think we can comment on in any more detail, and it would be a fairly unlikely situation, I guess, as well. And I would also say we're currently focusing our efforts on making sure everything can be covered. I guess coordination is important, but the most important thing, I guess, is that the projects go ahead. So I think that's where we're focusing most of the attention on with all this work at the moment as well. I don't know if Gavin wants to add anything to that. No, okay.
I think we've made our way through quite a lot of the questions here. There's one final question which I'll ask, which has come in, which I think is quite a straightforward answer, hopefully, which is, in the worst case scenario, if the UK becomes an associated partner, will the financial guarantee, the safety net, continue or not? I will. Who would like to respond to that? I suppose the question is, if we, sorry, Francis.
I can come in, Peter. I think, sort of, as Minister Freeman, who's the lead minister on this, has made clear that his department is working up alternatives to association. So those are not yet decided, and this is one of the options that is being discussed. The reason that these aren't ready is because the UK government's preference is still association. So that's where all our effort is going, is into making association happen. But we recognise that there needs to be these sort of, what I think the minister terms plan Bs, in order, if that worst case scenario does transpire. And I think I'll just sort of come back to what I said at the beginning, that there's been lots of questions in the chat about sort of where the delay is coming from, why is there a delay? And the delay is on the Commission side. So the UK government is ready and willing. We've got our association agreement ready. We are, happy to go and have the specialised committee whenever the Commission would like, and then we can formalise association. There is no legal or technical bar to our association. And I think there was just one question I might pick up from the chat around the sort of the lack of certainty is deterring applications. So we do understand that this is not the ideal scenario to be in, and that this is making things very difficult for all of you and for anyone who wants to be part of Horizon Europe. But I would just say that I don't think that is a scenario where essentially we as the UK government understand why there may be fewer applications going in right now, but that will not be a factor in terms of deciding whether we associate or not. The government position is very clear. Our preference is to associate. And also what my team does is about trying to kind of promote association so that we can have really good success rates for UK participants.
Great, thanks, Francis. I see there's a comment that's been made repeatedly about a specific call in the resilience. I'm not sure what that relates to, but I'm not sure there's much to say on that. To take the point, I see, I understand that the issue you're facing there, but I'm not sure there's much we can do in terms of answering a specific question there as it stands. I think we're nearly at time, and I think we have our speakers have done an admirable job, I think, getting through a large chunk of these questions. I understand there may well be questions that we haven't had time to cover today. As Gavin and Francis explained, there is an inbox which you can submit your questions to, and as I said as well, please do keep us at UKI in the loop in terms of the impact this is having on you as an institution. We will share the slides afterwards, and I hope that we'll be able to upload the full session to YouTube as well. So I think at this point I'll just thank our speakers once again for finding time today to answer the questions, and to, of course, to all of you as our viewers to tuning in. And we hope we've been able to answer as many of the questions as we can today. We will continue to do whatever we can to keep you informed about any future developments as regards association. Hopefully next time with good news about the fact this has all been wrapped up. But in any case, we will continue to work closely with our colleagues in the Science and Innovation Network and in UK Research and Innovation to do whatever we can to, as I say, to keep you all informed. So once again, thank you all to our speakers and to you, the audience, for coming along, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.